Hello? Beep, 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 beep. How are we, good peeps? I needed that cup of tea. It's 5 a.m. in the morning here and it's extremely miserable outside. I'm getting sick of it now. Come on! I need some sign of spring. That's what I'm waiting for next, which will stop me from being such a bloody hamster and hibernating away from everybody and everything. How are we today? First of all, my tremendous thanks for your response to the mini lesson that I did yesterday from the Warrior Teacher thing. I was surprised at the speed that grew. I didn't think it would be of interest to many people, but it seems that I've struck a chord, and not just struck a chord here in the UK, but I've struck a chord elsewhere. So I think there's something about human nature and understanding what the other person might be thinking when discussing topics that could be difficult or require them to change their mind, as you recall. So I thought we'd do another one. Seeing as we're seeing a fracturing of the movement. It's not really a fracturing, it's just a readjustment, I think. But we'll see how things turn out when tempers have cooled somewhat. That's not to say it wasn't justified. You want to be angry, be angry. It all helps. You just keep going forward. So I want to talk to you about something else. And we're going to try and use the modern technologies as well in this today. So I want to talk about knowledge. And not just knowledge, but meaning, right? So, okay, two things, knowledge and meaning. And then I want to talk about something called the Clash of the Argots, which you may or may not be familiar with. If you're not a Warrior Teacher, the chances are you aren't, because it's one of my things. So let's just talk about how things used to be. If I go back far enough, do you remember a film called The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery? And more monks will die, and they too will have blackened fingers and blackened tongues. He screams at his fellow monks as they ponder the absolutely vital question of whether or not Jesus owned the clothes in which he walked. So, religion can be that nitpicky. Funny that, innit? So, don't hurt me, right? So, when we think about the common peasants, and in that film the peasants were so common that they literally lived off the detritus left from the monks' food that was shoved out through a hatch and rolled down the mountain, and they collected from the side of the mountain because of their starvation. We know that historically the church has held sway, and they've kept that knowledge and then eked it out when they needed to control the population. This is something that's known, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's known. Certainly in antiquity, and to a certain degree in history in England. That's not to say that learning wasn't important and wasn't seen as something you should do. It's just that it was usually learning what the monks thought you should learn, or the religious body, or the archdeacon, or whoever it may have been, as opposed to the Greek version, which was that learning was okay for its own sake. So it's fascinating to a certain degree that we have got past that via the Enlightenment, right? The Enlightenment was, Gutenberg with the old revolution, with the printing press, and how that over years and years took the power of knowing from the hands of the church and spread it amongst the populace. And then you had the rise of the academics, and we got to the point where the academics held the knowledge, and they held that knowledge, and that knowledge would then come down through the system of usually the public sector, then the private sector, and then people that worked, and then from the people that worked to the populace. So that the universities held the knowledge right up until very, very recently. Well, that's changing, and we now live in a different world from that, because now we have a world in which when we had universities and the internet and all the stuff that comes with it, you had mass availability. We now, with the smartphone, have mass accessibility, which means everybody could read about stuff that would normally be hidden in the hallowed halls, or what you simply wouldn't come across because you'd have had to go to the library, or you'd have to search for it on the internet. Whereas now, social media and all it brings can link us with stuff that we're already interested in, that takes us to all sorts of places. Now, if you agree with that principle, which I hope that you do, he says, I hope that you do, then we can take that a step further. So imagine now that you are a lawyer, or a doctor, or a plumber, or anybody to whom there is a distinct language within a distinct and pretty exclusive in most cases profession, club, or idea. So, for example, the language of plumbers. I know nothing of the language of plumbers, except that I find it's interesting to listen to. Round your U-bend and your flange buttock, or whatever it is may be. So that's plumbing. Don't know anything about it, right? Doctors is even worse. Right, get them on the KP, RIV, OS9, call the Monty, Jumpy Banks, and off you go. Hello, and they go to me. Now, what we'd like to do just talk to me and tell me what I need to do, Doc. You're the expert. Same goes for example, philosophers. I saw Christopher Rufo and James Lindsay this morning waxing lyrical about teleological positioning, and I'm like, I love it when you two talk dirty, but for the love of God, give us a metaphor. Because people in their field tend to talk within the language of their field. The same could be said of any profession or any club. Professional club. A similar thought might be Polari, which was a language of gay men that they used to be able to speak openly without people knowing that they were gay men. So Polari, always nice to see Donny to see your Veek and your Vada and nice lallies. It was all this stuff. So the argot of plumbers or of scientists or whatever, or of gay people, can be, if you will, an almost secret language, or a language in which it is particular and peculiar to practitioners of that particular sphere. Plumbers, scientists, whatever it may be. That's what an argot is. So, for example, I love this little story, right? Because I tell it to my warrior teachers, because you're now getting one of the lessons, a mini lesson from the warrior teacher. There's a little nurse walking past two doctors, and both of the doctors are from the sub-Saharan Africa, right? Sub-Saharan Africa. And one doctor was saying to the other, no, it's Woomba. W-H-O-O-M-B-A. To which the other one responds, don't be ridiculous, it's Woomba. W-H-U-M-B. Woomba. And the little nurse hearing this little English nurse stops and says to them both, excuse me, doctors, I don't want to break up your conversation, but I think the word you're looking for is womb. W-O-M-B. Womb. Smiles sweetly and walks away. At which point, the doctors look at each other and one says, what on earth is the woman talking about? I don't expect she's ever seen a hippopotamus, let alone heard one fart underwater. Right? This is a confusion, a clash of argots, a clash of different words, a clash of different understanding. We say splash, the French say pluff. Isn't that lovely? Pluff. So there is this difference in language, right? Now, with the advent of smartphones, and the fact that everything's speeding up, a process called punctuated equilibrium, everything's speeding up. Imagine a set of snooker balls that previously were all in nice, tidy order, and suddenly along comes the white ball and smashes the snooker balls apart, and they all start going around the table and hitting each other. That's the clash of the argots. Each of those snooker balls represents a discipline. So I use the word grooming. That has a different meaning in the world of child safeguarding than it does if I'm just about to put the brush on the horse. Get it? If I'm a therapist who is dealing with a child who is individually taking on a gender identity, I may use the word gender identity and I may use the correct pronouns to enable my continued work with that child, whereas somebody outside of the practice of therapy would say no. So the clash of the argots is not just about words, it's about meaning. And if that's correct, we must all be cognizant of the fact that we could be arguing over one word or one situation or one idea in which we are in the milieu of the clash of the argots and isn't helping anybody. You can see this happening in real time in, for example, STEM subjects in the university, in which they're now saying that STEM subjects are being integrated with others because of interdisciplinary ideas. This is where the social justice nutters take advantage of our existing structures by attempting to, for example, insert art into STEM and make it STEAM. Or, as I saw at a meeting once when I was sat there, somebody coming in saying, oh, we're coming to queer STEM, who had a degree in the books of Thomas Harris. And my response was, what does that mean? Well, we're coming and doing some work in the field of STEM. It's interdisciplinary. I said, really? In the field of STEM? That's right, is it? I said, yes. They said, why? Do you have a problem with that? I said, I do. And they said, why? And I said, because STEM is a discipline. You don't have it. Right, okay. little mimetic bubbles of meaning floating around us and bumping into each other like the snooker balls on the table. In which case that is a recipe for mass misunderstanding. And boy, do these nut jobs love that. So we have to be very, very considered and careful about our communication with each other, because we may be talking at cross purposes. A word that has an incredible severity, for example, in New Zealand, may not have the same severity in Wales. A word that is regularly used in Britain may be seen as off the table in America. So this clash of the argot affects all our communications all the time, and on an individual scale as well, but also on an organisational scale. When you bring in words like anti-racist, which are supposed to mean anti-racist, but actually don't, they mean racist. So you get this switching and this clashing of words that means different things. This battle is one about information, knowledge and meaning. That's what it is. It's that simple. But it has real world and very serious repercussions. But it's worth considering what the clash of the argot is and how it might affect us as individuals when we realise that multiple disciplines and multiple viewpoints are being smashed together at a rate of knots we've never seen before because of social media. The clash of the argots is always an interesting one, because you have to think about, what do we mean? What does that person mean? What is that person saying? So yesterday evening, I put up a video of kinky buggers from the film Personal Services, starring the inimitable Julie Waters and directed by Cherry Jones, which some of you may have seen. That was the second video that came out yesterday after my short sort of mini teach about understanding where the other person might be in terms of their position when using pronouns. So let's talk about personal services. It's funny, isn't it? Golden Rain. So that was funny. Yeah, it's great. All these people with fetishes, right? So let's talk about the clash of the argots. If you work with sex offenders, there will be an argot that you have around it. If you work with people in social work who are maybe perhaps not inappropriate, adults who struggle, who aren't working very well, perhaps raising their children, and you're helping them, then there will be an argot around that. Likewise, I think it's important that we have an argot around what we're talking about, so we know what it is. And I think it's worthwhile exploring what is the difference between a fetish and a paraphilia. Okay? So a fetish is, welcome home, love. Right, you go and put on the quicker's outfit. Go and put it on the quick fitter's outfit, because that's, bit kinky. The old lad in the garage. Right, go get it on. Yep, I'll get the eclairs. So that's kinky, right? If I like, for example, massaging people, that could be a bit of a fetish. Oh, loving this. Or it might be that you'll indulge in the kind of stuff that Victoria Wood sang about in her song Frida and Barry, which is a tremendous example of the kind of twee middle class fetishism that goes on. Bang me on the bottom with the woman's week. Wear your baggy white fronts with the loose elastic. It's all this kind of kinky stuff that has been such a fundamental part of Britain for such a long time. You've only got to watch a Carry On film to see that the double entendre and the idea of a little bit of hanky-panky and how's your father was something that was built into the British psyche, right? So we can all be a bit fetishy, picking it, I like that, what's nice in it, we'll have a bit of that. That's a fetish, right? That's not paraphilia. So it's important to draw the line between the two. We can laugh and we can enjoy personal services and recognise that these guys are turning up at this woman's house and having a bit of kinky how's your father in private with consenting adults. That's not a paraphilia. We have to understand what paraphilia is. And paraphilia is an overwhelming, all-consuming desire to practice what is essentially a disordered behaviour, a deeply disordered behaviour. Necrophilia, pedophilia, that kind of thing, yeah. Really strongly associated with a kind of morbidity. It is bad for the individual and it is devastating for those around them. So when we consider paraphilias, such as autogynephilia, which is a paraphilia, let's make no bones about it, this is something that will consume you. It consumes you. That is a paraphilia. That we have to be very, very clear that that's massively different from getting dressed up as Red Riding Hood or, the big bad wolf or grandma or whatever it may be and running around being chased by a partner with a feather duster. kinky play, fetish, paraphilia. We have to draw that distinction so very strongly in order to understand what we need to do to help the groups that are affected by the behaviour of men with a paraphilia. So, for example, trans widows. So in the next video, I will be examining the stories around people who are trans widows, and in particular people who are children of men who are allowing themselves to be steeped in this paraphilia. And then perhaps we can centre them for a change when we discuss how simple it is to use pronouns or not, or whether or not it's okay to do that, to allow your paraphilia to run rampant so that you're carrying it out in the workplace without anybody's consent. So the clash of the Argo comes with a sort of serious edge, in that if we can't distinguish between what is kinky and fetishistic and what is paraphiliac, because fetishism can be anything, right? I fetishize, for example, film. I'm an absolute film fetishist. I can't get enough of it. Always excited in it. I love it. Doesn't always imply sexuality. Paraphilias, right, are a very mixed bag. They are immensely complicated, but what we know for absolute certainty is that there's one line of complication that we don't have to worry about, which is whether or not they're a bad thing. They're a bad thing to everybody around here. Anybody who's got it, it's a bad thing for everybody. And it consumes the individual. It is all consuming. It's how can I feed my paraphilia today? So laugh by all means at personal services, but think very carefully about what we mean by a paraphilia. Because we need to take the behaviour of these men incredibly seriously, no matter whether we're gay men, whether we're women, whoever the hell you are. We need to take the behaviour of these men very seriously, because all they want to do is to break boundaries. All they want to do is to feed that paraphilia. All they want to do is to enable it to be something that they live within. The paraphilia is the life. So yeah, so let's start looking at trans widows and those children that have had to endure these men who will spend the family money in order to get their paraphiliac kick, that will, after years of being married to someone, suddenly say, well, actually, this is what I want to do. I want to take estrogen. I want to grow a pair of breasts, because that's a paraphilia. That's a paraphilia, right? So let's distinguish the things. You know, we can all be a bit of a kinky beggar if you want to be, right? Why not? But we haven't all got paraphilias. And paraphilias are distinctive from what research I've been looking at, are generally distinctive to men. Very rare in women, but to men. Being kinky and having a bit of fun, that's not rare in women at all. They can be just as... Come on then! Right, come on then, hubby, get on the table. I'll get the goat. No, I'm kidding. So I'm asking us to consider that when we see paraphilic behaviour, it is that which we call out. Paraphilic behaviour damages everybody surrounded by it, and we shouldn't make light of it. Really, we've got to be quite serious about this, because they are a danger to themselves and others. It's that simple. They put people through hell. In the next video, we'll explore trans widows and the voices of children who had to deal with these awful men. Until then, enjoy the clash of the Argos. Fetish, paraphilia. Think about how these clashes of meaning, if we're not careful, will make us forget what the reality of the situation is and who we're having to deal with here. All right? Thanks for listening. Go do you.